Hello, my name is Natsuno Funada. I'm a DPhil candidate at the University of Oxford. I'm a GE Doctoral Webinar Coordinator, and today I'm going to talk about English language learners' attitude towards English today, which is my research. And I'm going to present one of my pilot studies. I hope you will enjoy my presentation. So this is the structure of my presentation. If you have any questions, concerns, comments regarding this presentation, please feel free to contact me. My email address will be shown at the end of the presentation. So let's start the presentation. So background for the study is the fact that there are more speakers of English as a second or foreign language than speakers of English as a native or first language. As you can see in figure 1 below, even in the field of tourism, 74% of the interactions are between speakers of English as a second language or foreign language. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And what is the effect of this phenomenon? One of the key concepts in relation to this situation is proselytic English. So especially in the field of English language teaching, we tend to teach one English, so American English or British Standard English, and this is the correct way of saying in English and so on. So we tend to see English as a single entity. But because of the current situation, we want to have a look at English differently. People use English differently in a different context or because of the different backgrounds and so on. So one of the ways to look at this shift would be investigating language attitude. So language attitude is very important concept because it reflects current community thoughts. And we can see how majority of the people think in society. And there are two ways of looking at investigating language attitude, mainly two ways. And one of them is verbal guise technique. And the other one is questionnaires, interviews, and cross-observations. I don't have enough time to explain the verbal guise techniques in detail, but briefly, participants listen to speech made by speakers of American English or British English or Japanese English and rate to what extent they are familiar with the pronunciation. They tend to focus on the accent particularly. And I think questionnaires and interviews and observations, you are already familiar with those instruments. So the problems of those methods used in the previous studies is that they tend to use the words like American English or British English or native speaker English. Because of the current situation I explained previously, what American English means, it's very difficult to answer because within American English, there are varieties. So we have to have some new instruments to capture the complexity of English today. So I decided to develop a new questionnaire. So before talking about questionnaire development, I would like to, let me talk about research question. which is what attitude do English language learners have towards English today? This is a pretty big question. I certainly do have sub questions, but for this presentation, I will focus on this main research question. So let me talk about questionnaire development. This includes multiple steps. First step is item creation. I talked to experts and we came up with 57 questionnaire items using Likert scale from strongly agree 5 to strongly disagree 1. Then I pre-piloted this questionnaire with general learners. I went to private language institutions in England and then also universities and asked learners directly whether they understand each questionnaire item. So I met students from Switzerland or China or Brazil. I met students with various backgrounds. So step 3 is piloting with general population. I'm going to talk about the results of this pilot study in this presentation. The next step is 2-stage piloting of a Japanese version. Japanese context is my research context. And then move on to main study. So this is the questionnaire I used for the pilot study. As you can see, participants read each sentence and ticks the boxes to what extent they agree with each statement. And for the pilot study, I added one question, which was this statement difficult to understand or to answer? I find this option very useful because I completely understand every questionnaire item, but doesn't necessarily mean participants understand. So if you are thinking about developing a questionnaire, I highly recommend you to include this option. So let me talk about data collection and data analysis for this study. Data collection, I use online questionnaire, as I showed you, and distributed this questionnaire to English learners across the world in 2017. And participants were 204 English learners from more than 20 countries, and they were more female students than male students, and average age was 21 years old. I used exploratory factor analysis for the data analysis. So let's move on to results. The factor analysis yielded 2 factors. One is related to more pluralistic orientation to English, and the other factor is related to monolithic orientations to English. 16 items were loaded on the factor 1, and as you can see, items loaded on these factors were related to students showing interest in different varieties of English, and speaker of those varieties, they want to get to know their communities as well. And they also had a beliefs about importance of being a multilingual user, and then they want to live in a multilingual community as well. They had a desire for having a clear pronunciation rather than having a native-like accent. 8 items loaded on the factor 2. So students showed a positive view about learning British and American English as a model, and they're also interested in their cultures. And British varieties and American varieties are important varieties to learn, and they want to be interested. They are interested in being a member of monolingual communities. They had a desire for native-like fluency and accent. So what's the implication? So there were only two factors yielded in the study, and pluralithic and monolithic orientations. Those seem to be different constructs. Rather than once you acquire pluralithic orientations, you don't have monolithic orientation at all. It didn't work that way. And statistical analysis are used, factor analysis in this case yielded language structure successfully. Although I found there were interesting findings, there are limitations in this study. One of them is sampling. I didn't do random sampling because of the limited access to the population, and then also the wordings of the questions were problematic because I included the terms American English, the British English, and then also native speakers as well, like the previous studies. This is partially because some participants who were more monolithic oriented, they didn't understand the notion, the complex notion of English today, and we needed to use those terminologies in order to make them understand what we are testing. So before moving on to the conclusion, I would like to talk about what I did next. I conducted the t-test in order to see the differences in attitude, orientations between two groups. In my pilot study, I got a lot of responses from Thailand and then also Korea. So I wanted to see whether there are any differences in attitude between those two. If there is a difference, I have to conduct another pilot study with Japanese populations. The results was there was a difference between those two, and I conducted another pilot study with exactly the same questionnaire I used in this pilot study with Japanese students. So in conclusion, the take-home message of this study is that there are two different orientations, and those orientations are entirely different, seems to be different. So it is important to explore the relationship between those two orientations further, and then also the factors affecting those orientations should be investigated in depth. These are the differences, and thank you so much for watching. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, this is my email address, so if you have any questions, any concerns, comments, please feel free to contact me. And thank you again for watching. And if you are interested in making video like this and interested in sharing this video with other researchers, please send the video to me, and I'm happy to upload your video to the website. I hope to hear from you soon. Bye.